I'm not even sure if this is recording. Is it recording?
No. Okay, well, we're gonna have to retake it at this point.
Okay, round 3, baby.
All right, round 3.
Uno, dos, tres, action. Sorry.
Welcome to the Pitcher Podcast, where the conversation is free flow, everything is on the house, and all we ask for in return is for you not to give us 1-star reviews. I'm Cody.
And I'm Ian.
And today we're going to be talking about conspiracy theories. So we have a couple that we just researched before starting recording that we're going to be talking about together. But before we get started, we just wanted to give a shout out to our friend Karina, who messaged us the other day giving us a suggestion for another D&D show to watch called Harmon Quest. I watched the first episode of it and it was really funny. So yeah, I've been surprised at like all the affirmation and encouragement from people who say that I shouldn't be embarrassed about being into D&D over the past couple of days. So thank you for that. If any of you have any other suggestions for like things we should try out on the podcast or things that Ian and I should just check out like individually, feel free to DM us either individually or through the PitcherPod Instagram, or you can also email us at pitcherpod@gmail.com.
Okay, so for the culture corner, you want to start us off, Cody?
Yeah, so today we thought we would recommend like TV shows that we like. So I guess I'll go first. And my TV show is Sex Education, which is on Netflix. And I started watching it, I think, like at the beginning of this academic year.
Very naughty show.
A bit naughty. Ian, do you want to quiet your iPad?
I will.
But yeah, I just really liked it. I think like the humor really appeals to me. And yeah, I've just like laughed a ton watching it. But aside from like the actual humor, I think it also talks about like a very taboo subject, which is like the whole issue of like sex and intimacy and like all that awkwardness, especially like growing up. And I think that it does a good job of like laughing it and like embracing in all kind of like the awkwardness of what like sex education is like in high school, and like takes a very taboo subject and just like plays around with it and makes it fun and like more approachable for a lot of people. And the way that it blends with comedy, I think, is like quite good. So yeah,
aesthetically it's such a weird show because like it's a mix between like a typical American high school and like at British high school as well.
Yeah. No, for sure. It was like clearly made to target both like UK and US audiences. And yeah, like in the high school, there's like a huge emphasis on like varsity athletics and like getting your like Letterman jacket and stuff, which like is not present at all in like UK high schools and stuff. But it is set in the UK and everything. And it is a very like aesthetic show too. So yeah, that's my suggestion for this week.
My suggestion for the week is the television show Ugly Delicious. It's by a renowned chef called Dave Chang. I'm not sure if you've heard of Dave Chang before.
Nope, not at all.
He's probably the most like famous Asian chef in the US. And essentially they're going over ugly, delicious foods. So foods that look ugly but are delicious. Okay. Such as like fried chicken, fried rice, things that are like, I guess the aesthetic standards are to like French cuisine, like something that's very delicate and very like elegant as well. But they talk about those types of foods like fried chicken and fried rice, but also explore the cultural nature of it. So like for fried chicken, they talked about how that tied to Black culture and its relevancy in like modern day as well. So I think it was pretty interesting. Like the food's really nice. If you love cooking, which I do, I've been doing a lot of cooking during the coronas, and I love watching it. I love learning a bit more about food as well. So I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure. Has it inspired you at all to like cook any of the food that you've like seen featured on it?
It just made me really hungry. Okay, but because it's really less so about looking at what the foods look like and how they prepare. Like it's more so about its background. And yeah.
Okay, cool.
So, as we transition away from that, you want to say anything that happened to you this week or catch up on any interesting events?
Yeah. So Ian and I are going to try to like now and then just give like a funny story or just like a notable like incident or something that happened this past week. And for me, mine is actually tied to my Culture Corner suggestion of sex education. Just for a little background on it, I'm like incredibly close with my parents and I'm pretty much just like an open book with them. I pretty much tell them everything. And we've just had a close relationship for, like a lot of time. because of that, we watch a lot of like TV shows together. And we just finished watching Dairy Girls together.
What's that?
It's about a show set in like the 80s in Ireland, and it's about like a group of like 5 like schoolgirls essentially, and like their journey in high school.
That make
and it's
milk?
like, what?
They make milk?
No, Dairy. Like the town is called Derry, so Derry.
No, they were milkmaids.
Oh no. It's like the town of Derry in Ireland.
Oh, okay.
But like the humor is really funny and like kind of vulgar too, but it's all like with Irish accents and like set in Ireland and stuff. So it's like quite funny. And so because of that, I thought just like Sex Education, with it being like a bit more of like a vulgar show also, but like with like UK humor and stuff, I thought that would be a good idea for them. And it wasn't at all. It was like so awkward
Super
and
awkward.
so terrible. Like the pilot of Sex Education just opens with like quite a graphic sex scene and stuff, and all the episodes too, actually.
Yeah.
But it's like I always forget that they're just like, even though I have a close relationship with my parents, there are just certain things that like, regardless of how close you are, it's always going to be like
how old you are.
Yeah. It's just going to be like never not awkward to watch a sex scene with your parents, especially when it's like recurring so many times throughout the episode. So I learned my lesson, and I'm not going to watch Sex Education again with them. And if you're ever thinking about watching Sex Education with your parents, just don't
think about
go
it.
there. But that was my week pretty much.
You want to do your best Irish accent for,
Not
for
at
the
all.
audience?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. Do you?
No, I do not. But like going back on your point about watching these kind of like movies with your parents, I just have a common understanding now that I will not watch any like Netflix originals with my parents, because I don't know what's with Netflix. They just always happen to squeeze in a super graphic sex scene in everything they have. Right. Whether it's like Narcos, where it's about like drugs, they somehow have to squeeze in like a graphic sex scene in there.
Right.
But the most recent one was like I was watching Parasite with my parents.
Oh no!
My dad fell asleep maybe like 10 minutes in. Like my dad always falls asleep in movies. So it was just me and my mom, and then it was a great movie. But then halfway, for people who haven't watched it, skip over this. But there's basically a very like graphic sex-ish scene.
Yeah.
Clothes were on, but you can. It's still very graphic nonetheless, and it lasted for like almost 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But the point of it was like the director was like, they want us to experience how awkward it is for like the other family. For those who have watched it, and throughout the entire time, I was just like commenting and just trying to break the awkwardness, because it was so quiet, so you can like hear every sound that's coming out of the scene. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. Koreans really love their graphic sex scenes. And my mom was like, yeah, they love putting it in every single movie they have. I'm like, yeah.
Was your dad still asleep throughout this entire
My dad's already back in his room. He's passed out. So I was just like, wow, this is going really long. And she's like, yeah. We just waited it out. It was so awkward. Like, this experience probably dates back, like this kind of sensation dates back to like when I was maybe like 12 or 10. And then we had like a massive group gathering with a bunch of family friends. I think it might be in like Christmas.
Yeah.
All the kids were hella young.
Yeah.
And then like 3 families together, we all decided to watch Love Actually. Have you seen Love Actually before? And then we watched the director's cut.
Oh, okay.
Essentially, there's a scene where these 2 people meet each other while filming like an adult movie.
Yeah.
And you can see everything. And then none of the parents realized that was gonna come up. And then they were like blocking the kids' eyes. And then like I had a friend, his name was Johnny. He was like probably less than 10 back then.
Yeah.
But then he was trying to quote unquote like cover his eyes. You can clearly see like his fingers were splayed apart, and he was actually just watching it the entire time. He was like, "Wow, this is so weird." As he was very curious about it, it was a very funny experience.
Yeah.
But
did you know like what that was back then?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's very obvious what it was.
Yeah. That's fair. It was like, I think a couple Christmases ago, actually, my family was together, and my parents really liked Love Actually. So we watched it as a family, and of course, like with with the whole like story of Love Actually, there's like all these different stories like spliced into it, but they keep like reverting back and forth.
Like subplots that all come together.
Exactly. And so whenever it would get to the one story of like the two like adult film actors and stuff, like they would just like fast forward over it, but it's so awkward fast forwarding through something because you like still see what happens, and it's just like it was just like dead silent as they're like, okay, we're just gonna fast forward through this.
It's like
you can see what's
actually worse when you fast forward because you like go too far in and you're just like, oh, we gotta come back, and then you come back and you're back in the sex scene and you're just like, okay, well, what are we supposed to do? And you just like sit it out.
Yeah, it's so bad. And then just like the awkward silence. I think the silence makes it worse. Which is why like
that's why I always try to like say jokes or make comments throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. After you finished watching Parasite with your mom, did you like comment on the sex scene or like bring it back up or not at all?
We were like, that was a good movie. Okay, good night. Good night. And I just head to my room. I was like, well, that was fucking awkward.
Oh, okay. That's so funny. I'm so glad I heard that.
All right, so for today's episode, I guess since the majority of us are either in self-isolation or quarantine, gives us a lot of time to think about different things. So I think it'll be interesting to discuss a few conspiracy theories, whether that's regarding our current situation or not. I think it's a nice, fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Just to preface, we haven't done a lot of research. But the thing about conspiracy theories is half of the times it's not like tied to logical evidence. A lot of times it's just like you trying to deny what's in front of you and just trying to think of like the craziest scenario possible. And you want to start us off with our first conspiracy theory?
Actually, no, you start us off. You start us off. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So recently, or maybe a couple of months ago, I was on Amazon Prime Video, and I came across this series called The Killers, or The Hunters. The Hunters, yeah. Essentially, the premise of it was a bunch of people who were either affected by the Nazi regime or were Holocaust survivors come together, and then they were basically hunting high-ranking Nazis in the U.S. So it's like the majority of it is fictional, but it's slightly tied to, I don't know if it's much of a theory anymore as it is factual now, now that it's been declassified. It's about Operation Paperclip, where after World War II, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, due to their competition during like the space race and just everything post World War II, they were kind of fighting over recruiting high-ranking German scientists or Nazi scientists that were part of the Nazi regime. And I gave it a bit more of an in-depth reading in terms of what Operation Paperclip was.
Yeah.
And came across this guy called Kurt H. DeBoos. I don't know if I'm even reading that right, but essentially he was an ex-SS Nazi scientist. And then he was recruited by the U.S. government, and then he was the director of NASA for a long period of time. So he was like, he goes from a high-ranking Nazi to a high-ranking person in like the American government, which is entirely insane.
Yeah.
Due to the fact that like the shit the Nazi has done, and the fact that they were never convicted of anything. They were given free roam in the U.S. And I think that was I don't know what to feel about that. Like I'm not really directly affected by a lot of the things that came by in World War II, but I don't see the morality behind it. But I mean, I'm sure we can always delve into the morality of different things, which I don't want to probably dig too deep into. But let's say the morality of the CIA.
Yeah,
there is no such thing as
right.
morals in the CIA. And I was like, I was just very surprised regarding this thing, I guess.
Right. Was that like the actual name that the guy was born with as well, or did they like assign him a new identity like once he came back, or like went to the U.S.?
I was looking at it, and I think that was actual name.
Oh, okay.
Kurt Heinrich DeBoos.
Okay.
So they didn't really make any efforts to hide his identity or
conceal
his identity. But in the same time, like, how would anyone know, right?
Yeah.
They'll just think it's some German guy.
Right. And they got rid of the Heinrich, though. They just call it
Kurt H. DeBoos. But, the false identities thing, it might just be like a fictional thing in the show The Hunters.
Oh, okay.
So in The Hunters, essentially, all these high-ranking Nazis came back to the U.S. and not came back to the U.S., but were invited to be in the U.S. And gave them new identities. I would recommend everyone to give it a watch, even if it's super fictional and like a bit far-fetched. I think it's something fun, something entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And it's on where? Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
Okay. Nice. So yeah, I guess for my conspiracy theory, I was looking up, and I think it's funny actually because we like ragged on conspiracy theories at the beginning of this, but we both chose conspiracy theories that ended up like being true.
Yeah, I know. which left it like less open for discussion. It was just more like
it's more like a fact, right?
It's more me telling you the facts of what happened, and we're just like, okay.
Whoa, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Nazis in the U.S. That is mad. That is mad.
But mine was, I was just on this like random page, like I literally searched into Google conspiracy theories that ended up being true. And one that I thought was quite interesting was the fact that during Prohibition in like the early 1900s in the US, obviously, like for those of you who don't know, there was like a multi-year period where alcohol was completely outlawed in the US. And that's how like a lot of like gangsters like Al Capone like made their huge fortunes and like built this big bootlegging empire essentially of like making alcohol like illegally and stuff. But because of that, the government really wanted to discourage people from drinking alcohol. And so the conspiracy theory says essentially that the federal government like poisoned alcohol, like started poisoning like alcohol supplies to discourage people from drinking it. And it kind of like ranges. People will like say that like, oh, they didn't actually like, it wasn't the federal government that was actually poisoning the alcohol. And I think that that's like probably true, of course. Like there wasn't like government agents like poisoning alcohol. But what I read online is that like the government agencies in charge of like this operation did recommend for like alcohol manufacturers and suppliers to start like adding chemicals that like they knew objectively like weren't good for the human body
but like
into their stores and
how
stuff.
would they be able to find out? Like were there documentation regarding
Yeah. That's the actual really interesting thing is that the government was pretty upfront about the fact that they were recommending like alcohol companies and suppliers to put unhealthy chemicals into it actually. So like on the page that I'm on right now, there's like actually a news story from back then during Prohibition of like government doubling down and adding alcohol poison content and like adding chemicals like benzene and stuff into it. So I think that their thought was like no human is going to like drink something that everyone knows is bad for them. So this way they can just like put a quick end to like people actually drinking up alcohol as a way to like kickstart Prohibition and everything. But actually like that didn't really work out, and
because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like there is a black market for alcohol and they're unable to control that to begin with. So poisoning regulated alcohol is just like kind of pointless, right?
Yeah, for sure. So like tens of thousands of people died essentially because they drank this like unhealthy chemically poisoned alcohol. But yeah, I just had no idea about that. And I think Prohibition is kind of something that like fascinates a lot of Americans now just because of like the absurdity of it and how crazy that would be to like imagine something like that happening nowadays. So like there's been a lot of TV shows that I feel like in the like past like 10 years or something in the US that have like depicted like various elements of Prohibition, like Boardwalk Empire is a really big one, or just like other like dramatized TV shows and stuff that show like Prohibition and like how that gave rise to like all these huge different like crime empires and things.
But what
in the
like
US.
do you know what the reason for Prohibition was?
Yeah. There was a big movement actually to get rid of alcohol because it was viewed as like a blight on society essentially. And I think that like the actual movement behind it, like I think they had like good intentions obviously and stuff. There was like a huge amount of like especially like fathers who would neglect work and stuff and like spend up like all their entire life savings like in the bar and just like come home, and then after they got home would like be really really abusive to like their wives or their partners and their children and things like that. So there's like this huge organized movement to essentially like protest alcohol stuff, and that ended up like gaining huge momentum, and actually like went to DC and ended up like being actually signed into law.
But the thing about like these kind of prohibitions, like I never think that like when you try to change something by taking something away, it will ever yield an actual positive benefit. It's too big of a transition, and like it leads to like the black market opening to these opportunities, and like it ties in really well with like my mentality towards rules and how people, I guess, respond to rules and regulations. The more you tell someone not to do something, they're more inclined to try it. Like, I mean, a very basic example is like drinking age.
Okay.
The drinking age is 18, and everyone's like wanting to drink before that. And there's some sort of like innate rebellion within our human nature that I feel like we don't like being tied down by rules. So I'm like, does that really solve anything to begin with? Like, did it actually have a positive impact? I doubt it did, because Al Capone was so successful during the time.
Yeah. I mean, I think, again, this is something that I haven't like researched a ton, and to a certain extent, like I just still don't know a bunch about prohibition. I've seen some really interesting documentaries that have been like recommended and suggested for me, so maybe that's something I should just like look into in my own time before I talk about all this stuff. But at least I would imagine that like it probably did a fairly decent job of like discouraging some people away from like drinking alcohol, just from the fact that like I think that once something is made illegal, there's like at least some people who like that will be enough for them to like stay off of it. And I also wonder like how like the geographic locations and stuff affect that too, because I know like Al Capone's empire was like huge in Chicago and stuff, and I went to school near Chicago, and like there's all these tours that like take you through like Al Capone's old house and like all of these old like crime scenes essentially. But I wonder like in the middle of the countryside or something, like if that had more of an effect too, you know, like rather than just like in big cities and stuff.
Because I think like prohibition has a good reflection on like a lot of the events that has occurred in modern day. So like with Portugal lifting the ban on all drugs, and I guess the use of all drugs, there has actually seen a decline in the usage of, I mean, Class A, or is Class A the highest?
Yeah, I think so.
Class A drugs. And like when it comes to prohibition, I feel like that's such a poor approach to vices that we have in society. Like in the US, they've somewhat, I guess, learned their lesson and deterred themselves and taken the approach to regulate instead of prohibit, especially with like weed and cannabis. Which I think is much smarter. Like people are still going to use it. At least this way you can regulate it and be able to protect the population. So I think that's a pretty interesting event in the past. Sorry, having a lot of nervous itches, a lot of rubbing, and a lot of smacking and patting.
Ian was just rubbing his hands together, and I like straight up put my hands over his.
I don't know if you could hear it though. It's very silent rubbing. It's very silent rubbing.
Yeah, that reminds me of the war on drugs under the Bush administration, and us learning about it. Or at least for me, the first time I learned about that was in our English class, actually, with Miss Smith. Yeah. She was very against like the whole Bush era administration and stuff of like post 9/11 reactions and stuff. But I think we also like analyzed an article on like the war on drugs, and it kind of just turned into like our English teacher like talking about politics
and her own views.
Yeah. But I loved it actually. I really liked it. So yeah, that was my conspiracy theory. And then
do you have another one as well?
Yeah. Ian's just looking at my notes right now. But this is something that is super salient for me. But with COVID-19 and like all of the universities going like online and virtual and stuff, a lot of US universities have taken the initiative to do optional pass-fail for a lot of their classes for like the spring of 2020 semester. And so our school is relatively slow to adopt this. So they only like officially announced it like 2 weeks ago at the time of recording. But so I was essentially like with pass fail essentially, and like the way GPA works in the US, like if you don't if you choose not to do pass fail, obviously like you're just going to get a letter grade, and that's going to impact your GPA calculations and stuff. But then if you just do pass and fail, then it like doesn't affect your GPA. This is probably actually like really self-explanatory. I don't know why I need to explain any of this. But I was calculating essentially like what my GPA would be if I pass-failed this one harder class that I was taking, versus like if I just chose to stick with like a letter grade and stuff. And our school provides us with this service where it like has a record of all of your grades and all of your courses before, and then like will automatically calculate everything for you. But then you can also like toggle with the inputs and say like, it'll pull up your current course load and be like, okay, if I got like a B in this class and like an A- in this class, like what would my GPA be at the end of the semester or something like that. So I've used that before, and I know like a lot of other students have used that because it's tied to like our school portal and really easy to use. But also our school is like very, very metal and just like hardcore about like classes. And so like for
what regard?
Well, like our school is like in the Chicago area, so in the Midwest, and like winters are really, really bad. So we often like will just get like days where it's like a blizzard or like a huge snowstorm. And like historically our school has like never canceled class for like a snow day. Even when like a lot of other schools in the Chicago area, like universities, have canceled their classes. Or like the school district, so like high schools and middle schools and stuff have like canceled their classes.
So just like zero leniency.
Yeah, pretty much. And so there's just like that. And then it took us, essentially there was like a student movement in our school in the wake of COVID-19 to do pass-fail. And then our provost sent out an email saying that like, no, we weren't going to be doing pass-fail like a couple days after that petition surfaced. And then like a month later, they just emailed saying that, oh, actually we are going to do pass-fail.
I don't get why they would ever have any reason not to do pass-fail though.
I know. It's like, it's just because
is there any reasoning behind it?
I think like their whole reasoning was like, oh, we don't want to, like if students really want to up their GPA and stuff, like we don't want to take that away from them. But I think they just didn't realize that they could also make it optional.
Yeah, exactly. That makes it so much easier.
So yeah, anyways, our school has been like super metal just about like grades and like not like compromising the academic integrity of our college education and all this stuff. So I was logging in through that portal that I've used for like the last 4 years to calculate my GPA and stuff, and it was down. And I sometimes like the portal goes down and stuff, so I just like refreshed and then opened it up on like a different browser and stuff too. And then I was like, it still wasn't working. All this like code was popping up and stuff. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I bet so many students are just like quickly calculating their GPAs and stuff right now because of the pass-fail announcement that came out. And so I was like, okay, I'll try like during midnight in Chicago time. And it also didn't work. And I was like, okay, maybe that's weird. Like the system must just be like really like jacked up right now. And so for like the next week, I would log in like every day at different times and like try to calculate it, and it wasn't working. And this was literally right after they announced the pass-fail announcement. And I had been even calculating my GPA just like for my interest in stuff like before this had happened earlier in the semester, and it had worked, and I'd never seen this program go down. But I checked like literally the day after the pass-fail announcement came out, and it just like wasn't working. And so that just like made me really, really suspicious about like whether it was like some big conspiracy,
an inside job,
exactly, an inside job to get students like not to calculate their grades as a means of like deciding what they should do, like pass fail, because
and even not take up the option of pass fail.
Exactly. And even in the pass fail announcement, like the provost like strongly suggested students to like consult with their academic advisor before considering taking a course pass fail because of like the repercussions it could have and all this, like how it could affect your learning and stuff. So like I'm honestly like, I don't know, it seems like too much of a coincidence for me.
I just don't get why they would force you not to do it. Like, if they're so like, if they place such a large focus on academic integrity, then wouldn't it be more beneficial to have everyone do pass fail?
I don't know.
Unless everyone in the school are just like underachieving, then it's just like, come on, guys, we gotta pick it up. Let's not do this pass fail thing.
You can email my school. You can email the president for me.
I don't know why every time you like talk, like not every time, but when you talk about conspiracies regarding, I always envision. I'll bleep that out. I always imagine like everyone in like upper management are kind of like in dark cloaks, like a cult, like they're underground. They have like torches and everything, and they were like pass, fail, pass. They were like agreeing or disagreeing on it.
Yeah, no, that's
sacrificing
funny. Yeah.
I just said it. I gotta have to bleep out so much of it.
I'm so glad you're the one who's gonna have to be adding the bleeping out. But right? with my university being just like quite small, white, conservative Christian, and like in the Midwest, I like just throughout the past couple of years, whenever I've come back to Hong Kong and like am saying like a funny story about how our school operates, I feel like all of my friend group, including you, are just like so shocked because it's so different from like your university experience and stuff. So yeah, anyways, that is my university GPA.
On the topic of, I guess, conspiracies that are somewhat factual. I just realized this whole episode is filled with like there aren't even theories anymore. It's just events that we're talking about. I recently watched, not recently, maybe like a month ago, watched a movie called Dark Waters that was starring Mark Ruffalo, and it was, I think Mark Ruffalo is a big activist in terms of,
he's Hulk, right?
Yeah, he's Hulk. Hulk is a big environmental activist. But essentially, the movie is regarding the DuPont chemical company.
Yeah.
And basically, the scandal was in West Virginia, where there was a massive DuPont factory. They recently discovered Teflon. So Teflon is a sort of coating that is like anti-rust or something. Okay. So a lot of our stainless or stainless steel pans, or actually not stainless steel, like stick-free pans.
Oh, yeah.
Or like even carpets or like flooring uses Teflon.
Yeah.
And basically, they were doing a lot of testing in West Virginia, and a lot of locals who were exposed to Teflon got really sick, whether that's cancer, but just some sort of disease that like deteriorates the human body. And basically, they were saying how Teflon was leaked into the water, and they were covering all of this.
Right.
And they had to do a lot of blood testing, and it came to a conclusion where like thousands upon thousands of people in West Virginia were exposed to Teflon due to it being either in the air or in their water supply, which leads to that many thousands of people who are bound to catch some sort of chronic disease.
Yeah.
And basically, Mark Ruffalo plays a lawyer, I don't know where, but he's helping a bunch of farmers and the city of West Virginia fight against DuPont. And basically, the case starts in 1991, and they've been fighting DuPont since then till this day.
Oh, it's like still ongoing.
It's still ongoing. So that's how many cases and how hard even DuPont is trying to fight this.
Right.
And like the scariest thing was, spoilers. Is it really spoilers? Okay, basically like in the end of the movie, there's always like a bit of text.
Yeah.
And the text said like 99% of people in the world, not even just in West Virginia, are currently exposed to the poisonous like nature of Teflon.
Oh my god.
So in some sort of way, our human bodies are actually like affected by these chemicals that might have seeped into our water supply or in our air.
Right.
Which I'm just like, this is like, it was so discerning to me after watching the movie.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh shit, we're all doomed.
Right.
But then like I think about it, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to be this like alarmist guy where I'm thinking everything is trying to poison us.
Yeah.
It is like trying to raise awareness to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But it's yet again, it's like, how are we supposed to prevent this? Like we use, like half the stuff we use and half the stuff we eat are mixed in with chemicals or like man-made materials. Like we breathe in pollution on a like daily basis, and it just seems a bit stupid if we're like panicking about all of this, but in the same time, it is pretty scary when you hear it firsthand.
Yeah. We're all slaves to corporate.
We're all slaves. Going to protest, Cody.
But yeah, anyways, that was our conspiracy theory.
You have no comments. You have no comments about us dying.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. That was my comment.
But the thing is, like, I don't know where I heard this or like whether I read this somewhere, but like our natural human lifespan should surpass 100 years.
Oh, really?
A bit over 100 years. And it's just the fact that everything that we're consuming is shortening that.
Right.
That's why our average lifespan is down like maybe like 70, 80.
Okay.
which is crazy. And
Yeah.
in the Bible, it's like 3,000 years. I swear, like in Genesis, like some of these people lived for like 400 years. I'm just like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
They didn't have DuPont, man. They didn't have Teflon.
They
had no chemtrails. No chemtrails.
Oh man, R.I.P.
So are we gonna talk about any more conspiracy theories, or are we just gonna end it here?
No, I think we'll just end it.
Okay, so thank you for tagging along with us, listening to this somewhat interesting, hopefully interesting conversation of ours.
Oh yeah. Also, if you have any suggestions for conspiracy theories we should follow, we'll just turn this into a conspiracy theory podcast. Actually, while we're at it.
Like actual conspiracy theories, because right now, like, we're leaving not a lot of room for discussion because, like, these are kind of factual, like Operation Paperclip.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna be more up for discussion about how there were Nazis in America.
Right.
It's just more like, wow,
it's more of a fact. Yeah, that's crazy.
there were Nazis in America.
Yeah, Ian and I always like eat lunch right before we do a podcast, and so we always use that time to like plan out what we're going to be talking about a bit in our podcast. And we had both started out with being like, oh, we should just like talk about these crazy conspiracy theories. Like, why would anyone believe in this? And so I think we just realized, like, as we're recording, that we just like covered 2 like conspiracy theories that are like actually just
we didn't cover any ones that are like mad, like crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, so if you have any suggestions for conspiracy theories that are crazy or just like also confirmed,
not confirmed,
or any level of that, just like message us or DM us or
Okay, so you can follow us on Instagram at PicturePod. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts as well. We pray that you give us a nice 5-star review. And we're going to be giving shout-outs to everyone who rates and reviews us on Apple Podcasts. But also, please check us out on Spotify if you guys love using Spotify. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you can rate and review on Spotify.
No, but you can subscribe. It's either like subscribe or follow us.
Subscribe or follow us. You can even check us out on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. I think it's called The Picture Podcast as well.
Yep.
I think we're planning on probably posting a video podcast maybe once every 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So you can see a bit of us. You can see what we look like. And lastly, you can also email and DM us at picturepod@gmail.com with any thoughts or suggestions about topics that we can talk about, or things that you might be interested in for us to check out, whether that's like a TV show, a movie, or even a book. So, thank you for listening, and we hope to grab a picture with you guys next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
I'm cramping up. Bye.